Hello world, and welcome to the next part of the tutorial. And today we are going to be updating our player scene. So we are going to be adding bullet to our player, and we are going to be adding a bullet to our enemy. So first let's go to the player scene, and so let's go to the script. And now what you actually want to do is first of all, let's go over to the project over here, project setting, and let's go to the input map. We can already see that we've already have the some input that we can use, and we have this shoot, which is a X, to be triggered by the X key. So now we are going to add the code to do that, so that the player can shoot with the X key. So can still use the input dot, sorry, sorry. So we are going to pass in the name of the level of our input map, which is shoot. So going to guide if input dot is action press, this is X for the shoot. So first of all, let's go ahead and print some words shooting. Let's go ahead and run our scene. Alright, let's run the main scene. Okay, so now if I press X, I'm getting shooting, but I'm getting it way too much. Like if I just hold the X, I'm going to be getting shooting, 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 shooting. And we don't want our player to just keep shooting the enemies. That's going to make for a very good game. So now we are going to add a timer to help slow down the rate of shooting, the rate of this code being triggered, so that now we can set like a cooldown timer. So now let's go ahead and do just that. And before we proceed, I think I discussed about grouping earlier in the tutorial, but I'm still going to go over it briefly. So to group nodes together, maybe enemies node and etc, we can easily add the node. Yes, it's a node called a node. So now, and we can use it to group that node. So let's go ahead and use it to group all the timers we'll be using for our player scene. So let's go ahead and add the timer node, and under the inspector over here, the inspector tab over here, we can set the wait time, which should be around maybe 0. No, maybe 0.2, and let's set it to not one shot, but let's just leave everything as it. You can change the process call back over here to physics. So now we are going to add an and. So what this does is that is first of all check for this, if input dot is action prices shoot, and then it check for the other condition over here. If both are true, then the block of code over here is run, gets run. So you can check that if the timer, okay, wait, first of all let's rename it to cooldown timer. Is very important to name your nodes, to give them a very descriptive name about what they do. Dot. You can easily check for the time length. The time length is less than or equal to 0. So this gets run, and now what you are going to do is under the, okay, first of all, let's go ahead and create the ready function. Don't forget, the ready function is being called when the node enters the scene tree. So under the ready, we are going to start the timer, the cooldown timer. And now let's start. So what this does is that when the game first run, if we press the X key, we are not going to shoot any bullet until after 0.2 seconds, and after that we are not going to shoot anything anymore. So we are still going to have to start the timer over here. Okay, I just noticed a silly mistake. Let's set this to one shot. Right, so I think everything is set. So let's go ahead and run the scene. And so now if I hold the X, you can see that we are getting what we want. We are getting what we want, and this is very good. This is very good. So now let's go ahead and add the bullet to the player. So to add the bullet to the player, we're going to go back to our library sprite. Okay, let's just wait for it to load. And in the meantime, let's delete this printing. It's a very good idea to always remove all the printing, uh, because they are only used for debugging purpose, and once we debug our code, we can just remove the print. So all the print function shouldn't be in your program. So now what is, okay, let's go over here. Okay, now we are going to make it a system by system pixel. I've already discussed about this in the pixel art tutorial. So if you haven't watched it yet, you can do so first. So, and there are a lot of great tutorials out there. So let's click on the horizontal symmetry over here, so that anything we draw over here gets reflected on the other side over here. So let's draw our bullets. So okay, so I want the bullet to be something like a cylinder, something like that, and very sharp mouth like this. You don't have to necessarily follow exactly what I'm doing. You can just come up with your own bullet. And now what are we going to paint this bullet? Just paint it red. Just paint it red. So this this should have more brightness over here. So more saturation, and for the shading parts. So I believe we've actually had a good grasp on what's going on right now. And if you haven't, you can kindly check the pixel art tutorial. Okay, I think there is something powerful running in the background, so that is why we are getting this. So let's just wait for a moment. I think. Okay, now we can continue with our drawing. So let's make this less saturated. Let's drag it over to the purple area. So, that was good, but it can be better. Give it some. Okay, we're not going to make it like this. I'm going to make it like this. Let's increase the saturate decrease. You don't have to follow the exact steps that I'm following. I'm going to give a link to the asset in the description. So if you actually want to use this asset, and so we are going to actually create a two frame because we want our the enemies to also have a bullet. So the enemy bullet is going to be less saturated compared to the player bullet because we want the player bullet to stand out than the enemy bullet. So let's go ahead and just follow the same process. And so now we are done with both the player bullet and the enemy bullet. So we can just export our sprite sheet over here, and let's just name it bullets. Click the export, and now we can finally use our asset in the code over here. So now I'm going to create a scene. I'm going to add a area 2D, and let's name it to uh, bullet, and let's add the sprite 2D. And now I'm actually going to explain some basic usage of this node. So with the sprite 2D, you can just add any image you want to add to the sprite 2D. Like sprite 2D is used mainly for displaying graphical components of games. So since it's graphical component, are going to be needing an image. So let's go ahead and drag the bullet image to the texture property over here. So and now we have our image displayed over here in the game scene. So now what I want to explain is this animation properties over here. So you can see that we have lots of variables over here. You have the H frames, you have the free frames. The H frame is just like horizontal frames, and the free frame is just for the vertical frames. So now we can actually add how many frames do we have in the horizontal frames, and we can see that it is 2 because we have the player bullet over here. We also have the enemy bullet over here. So let's go ahead and increase this to 2, and the free frames is just 1. we only have a one particle frames. So now if we increase the frame over here, you can see the frames gets changed to the next image, which is one. And since we only have two two frames, so we can only change it between 1 and 0. So 0. So that's all about the animation panel over here. So it's very helpful and can come in handy for your game development journey. And now let's go ahead, and since an area 2D node needs a collision, let's go ahead and add it. I'm going to add a collision shape 2D node. So under the shape, let's change it to capsule. I think cap should be okay. I think, yeah, let's just leave it like this. So let's go ahead and save our scene. So let's add a script to our scene, to our blessing. Oh, sorry. Before that, I think there's something we need to do. Let's delete the bullets script. So now let's create a new scene. I actually wanted to use this to explain a feature, because we could have easily create a bullet for our player and our enemy directly from the bullet scene over here, but it's a little bit complex for beginners, so we are not going to do that. So we're actually going to create a completely separate scene for, sorry, we are going to create a completely separate scene for our player and our enemies. So now you can easily instantiate this bullet scene. So what this does is that we are actually going to take all the nodes from this scene, and we are going to like import it to another scene. And now, but since we are importing it from this blessing, any changes we make to these blessings uh, is going to be up to update over here. You can also think of it like as what we're actually doing over here, but instantiating is a little bit different from that, because now this, if we actually make some changes to our player, we can easily like uh, maybe add something to it, and maybe like change some value over here from the player scene, and such value is not going to reflect over here, but that is completely different from instantiating, in the case that every change we make over here is going to reflect over here. So let's go ahead and instantiate the blessing. And now you can see all these yellow, all these nodes, they are colored in yellow, which means I think uh, we have like some limited changes we can make to them. I think, I'm not very sure, but I think that, because there are sometimes that I actually want to edit an instantiated scene and I'm going to get an error. I'm not even sure we can delete it. So they are only here, and they are here to stay. So now we have a separate scene over here. Let's move this to the player bullets. And now we can save the scene. Player bullet. Now we are going to add a script to our bullet. And now let's quickly add the two basic function, which is the ready function and the process function. And we are going to create some variables like the speed, the direction. So let's name this vector2.0. Let's make it a constant because we're not going to be changing it, like 100. And okay, so first of all, let's go to the enemy player scene and let's create a variable for the bullet scene. Let's name it I'm going to load the file of the bullet scene. The player bullet is over here, the bullet scene that we've created. And so now let's add the bullet to the player, but first of all, I'm not sure we're going to add it to the player directly. And I'm going to see why I said that, because we actually want to add it to the main scene over here. We don't want to add it to the player scene, because don't forget, if the root node over here, which is the player over here, if it got moved, all its child we also got moved. So if we add the bullet as the child of the player, what is going to happen is that when we move the player, the bullet also moves, and we don't want that. We want the bullet to move on its own. First of all, we're going to make sure that the bullet position, make it a global position, not local. We are going to set it to the player position. And now we have this we've set the player bullet to the current location of the player. And now instead of just adding it using the add child function over here to just add it as a child over here, animated sprite 2D is a child of player, collision sprite 2D is also a child, and timers is also a child of player. But cooldown timer is not a child of player, it's a grandchild of player. So now if we use the add child function over here, it's going to add uh, the player bullet as a child, just like the animated sprite 2D and the collision shape 2D. So, and we don't want to add this as the player child, we want to add it as the main child. So let's go ahead and we are going to use something called grouping, and I believe I've already discussed about this. So let's add our main scene to the main group, and now we can easily use we can easily get our tree and then call the function of get first node in group passing the main, and then we are going to add, we are going to call the add child function, and we are going to pass in the player bullets. And now let's go ahead and run our scene. And now let's go ahead and click X, and you can see that we are now getting our, our bullets on this scene, on this screen. Sorry. So cool. This is cool. And now let's go ahead and uh, ensure that the the bullet is actually following the enemies. So when I shoot, I'm going to shoot the enemies. So now this is going to get a little bit trickier, but first of all, let's go ahead and add our enemies into a group of enemies. So now under the player bullets over here, you can easily set the direction, our position. You can actually just go ahead and do this, just add it to the speed, add speed to it, the direction, and multiply everything by delta, which is very, very important, so that we can get uh, a consistent frame across all devices, despite of their of how fast they are. So but still on stage now, if you run the scene, we are going to get nothing, because the direction vector is actually not doing anything, because it's just zero. And if you keep adding zero to something using multiplication, sorry, we are actually going to get zero. Anything multiplied by zero is zero. So now we don't want that zero. So let's go ahead and add what is going to make it move by changing its direction vector. I'm going to see why I said this might get a little bit trickier now. Let's get a variable with direction vector, and now we're going to get our direction to the enemy. So actually we are still coming back to this, because this is just like a placeholder, and this code is not perfect yet. We are going to refactor all of this, and this is very good, because what you're actually building now is like a prototype that we are going to build on later. So we can easily get our direction to the player, so that we can easily add it to the bullet, so that the bullets know that this is where I'm going, and if I keep going here, there's a possibility that I'm going to reach the enemy and kill the enemy. So let's add a global position dot, we are going to add a direction to, and don't forget, this is not the final code, and we're actually get 3. We're actually going to change a lot of things over here. Enemies. So you can easily now go over the p bullet and change the direction to equal to the vector. And now I'm getting a 1. Oh, sorry. Yeah, to the enemy global position. So now let's go ahead and see what this does. Okay, now this is looking like a game. So we can see that we can now shoot the enemy, and sorry, the bullet is moving a little bit slow, but it's a good start. We can always change things later on to ensure that we are getting a very good game. We can always change things over things. And now if I hold the X, you can see that there is a like cooldown for the player, so that the player is not just shooting tons of bullets so to the enemies. So and now this is very good. And I think the next thing is to actually rotate the bullet so that the direction it is facing is is to the location is actually going. So now let's go over to the bullet. No, I'm not going to go over to the player bullet over here. Now let's go this rotation for the player bullets. I just rotation bullet rotation. That makes a lot of sense than the latter. And now what we're actually going to do is global position dot angle to point, which is a dot first noding group. And you can already see that there is a lot of redundancy going on over here. Like we are calling this function too many times. You can just set it as a variable, and as I've said earlier, we are going to actually refactor things a lot in the next section of the tutorial. But for now, let's just go ahead and just try things out. Global position. And it's still not going to work. I think how I fix this, just so I add the pi to it. So this is like I'm adding like a 45 degree, because the way the rotation works doesn't work from up over here. Like it works a little bit weird. So it starts from here instead of starting from here, and this is the location, the direction the bullet is facing, and not here. You can easily fix that by just rotating the player bullet, but let's just do it in code over here. So this is what we use for the rotation. I think this should work. So we are just going to add a play bullet dot rotation. We are going to set it to the bullet rotation, and let's go ahead and try things out. Okay, I'm not I can't even believe this works once, because most of the times most of the time when I'm writing code, getting it to rotate perfectly used to be some of my major problems, I think. But with time, uh, I've get to understand how the rotation actually works. This uh these methods over here, the angle to point, It's not the only method that we can use, but how the angle to point works is that the angle being calculated is just assume that this is the direction of your sim that you're actually trying to rotate, and which is not so. You can already see that this is also even also facing over here and not here and not over there. So that's how the rotation works. And for now, I'm just going to like add a node over here. Let's name it bullet. So this is going to be the place that we're going to add all the bullets. I'm not sure I should add any paint, but I think I should add the underscore over here. uh, it's not a must. I can also add it over here, which I think makes more sense. So let's just, and now we are going to go to the player scene. Let's go over here, and I think, yeah, over here. So change it to bullets, and let's check if everything works perfectly. I'm also going to use this medium to explain the remote over here that we get once we start our scene. And now I can just go over the bullet node over here, and you can see that we are getting bullet added to node our bullet node over here in runtime when I'm running the game. So now I can keep shooting, and you can see that now we have a node. And so this is this sentry that I was talking about. So when a node enters here, the ready function gets called, and that's all about it for this tutorial. And in the next tutorial, we're actually going to refactor things a lot. We are going to add more enemies. We are going to add, I'm not sure we are going to start with the HUD, which is just a fancy acronym for heads up display. And I think that's all for this tutorial, for this part of the tutorial. So stay safe, and I'll see you in the next part of the tutorial, uh, where we are going to add a bullet to our enemies and the player. Till then, see you soon. Bye.